platforms. We are just about ready to get started. If you want to join us live, sellerroundtable.com, and you can join us there. And if you want to, you can ask questions. We have Kim Meckwood here today. She is an inventor and a rock star and has been on a show that nobody's heard of, which we may or may not discuss, but she's been on TV, which I know is, all of you guys are going to get super excited. Join us live if you want to be there, sellerroundtable.com, and we are about to ready to get started.
All right, I'm ready. I'm excited.
All right,
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes.
Except I sent you the document and then I closed my own. All right, there it is. We got it back. All right, let's get this started.
Hitting that record button.
Me too. Yay for us,
Okay.
Especially for me. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andy Arnott with
Amy Weiss.
And this is Seller Roundtable number 131. We are super excited to have Kim Meckwood on. Kim, welcome. Thanks so much for being on today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Kim, the way that we always like to start our show is to get a decent amount of background. You don't have to give us, the 20 minutes, intricate, about how Mikey in 8th grade wouldn't give you a hug back. We don't need to go that deep, but we'd love to hear kind of where you're born, where you grew up, kind of your hard knocks, school work, kind of what your life journey was until today.
All right. Well, I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania. Everyone knows Scranton because of The Office. And I went to school here for 2 years and then transferred out to school in California. And I've been in California for 30 years. So I live in Los Angeles. And let's see, went to San Diego State. Lived in San Diego for 8 years, then now another 22 in Los Angeles, went into pharmaceuticals, then medical device sales, and now I'm an inventor.
Awesome. I love that. So one of the other things, whenever people watch a lot of the e-com world, a lot of the entrepreneurial world, they always see the like glitzy stuff, right? The big parties in Las Vegas, the limos, the fluff, right? So what I would love to know is, let's start out with some of the early challenges that you kind of had to overcome in terms of, getting your from your idea to maybe your prototype to your invention. Kind of what were some of the early challenges on that journey?
Gosh, there were so many. So the first was actually getting a working prototype or actually getting the motivation to move forward with my invention. So at the time I was selling a drug for Parkinson's disease. And one of my doctors at USC, she's one of my best friends to this day, but she said to me, will you shut up and stop talking about this and do something about it? So I did. She happened to have a neighbor who was studying her master's for product design at the Pasadena Design School. So I called Audrey and I hired her to help me with a 3D CAD print. Plus, the Pasadena Design School actually had a 3D CAD that enabled me to make inexpensive prototypes. So I went through 9 different iterations before I came upon the winner. So then the next challenge came into play. The next challenge was getting a mold made. So I sent $5,000 over to China to have a mold made and received the product, and it didn't work. There were some modifications that needed to be made. Those modifications were made. I filed for a patent. The next obstacle, it took about 3 years for the first utility patent, because at the time we had a recession and the patent office didn't have a whole lot of employees. Made another modification, ended up getting a second patent, and then it was time to launch the product. So those were the early obstacles.
Yeah. So, a lot of people would love to know, how you kind of came up with the product. And as you did that, a lot of people, did you convince yourself early on, this is going to be a great product, home run, like it's going to rock? Or were there a lot of self-doubt or, early challenges in terms of not only convincing other people that it was a great idea, but just convincing yourself that it was a great idea?
So I'm an inventor, so no, I never thought it was a bad idea. I always thought it was fabulous, of course. That's how inventors are. But there were a million naysayers around me. And just for reference, I want to show you what Click and Carry is. So this is Click and Carry, and it's a simple handle device that helps shoppers to manage and carry multiple bags at once. Now, I developed it for groceries, but people use it as a ski-boo tote, which you would need in Idaho, for dry cleaning, for paint cans and construction pails. You could walk multiple dogs at once. And then once you get it home, it's a stand for your phone or iPad. And I'll quickly show you how it works. You twist it open and you load the handle bags onto each side. Each side takes 40 pounds for a total of 80. And then you click the top back in so the bags are locked into place, and you could carry it in your hand, or better, you wear it and your hand's free. So the reason I invented it is because I had this amazing boyfriend, and when we broke up, I had to carry my own groceries, and I knew there had to be a better way. So that's where Click and Carry was born. And originally it was just the bottom section, and it actually worked. It was perfect. But the problem is when you set the bags down, they would pop out because there was nothing to lock it into place. So the next iteration actually had two pieces with a magnet in the center, and that would have worked well. But as a dad of 3 young kids, a kid could get hurt on it or help you to lose one piece or the other. So I knew it had to be a single unit, and it's actually patterned after a Brett, and this became the winner. So when it's locked into place, it looks like a boomerang. Otherwise, it's an X, and that's how Click and Carry was born.
I love it. What it reminds me of when I went on your website and kind of took a peek around is it reminds me, and like you looking like, you know, I'm old enough, I'm going to date myself here, to know what National Geographic magazine was. My parents had it around, and I was always like thumb through it. And it reminds me of, you know, probably like in India or Brazil, where women are carrying like these giant things with a stick kind of over their shoulder, kind of balancing it. That was kind of like, it looked like the modern version of that. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah, and the other thing I thought it was, you know, some of the most simple ideas are some of the greatest ideas, and it also made me chuckle because my dad and I always have this joke about we don't want to take more than one trip from the car into the home when it comes to bringing groceries in. So like my dad and I are experts at literally getting like, you know, like as many bags on each finger as we can while we're like, you know, supermanning it into the house. So I think that's pretty interesting. Something that I think a lot of people that I've talked to think that you need some kind of like, you need to be special or super smart or something like that to come up with an idea like that. What do you say to those people who, you know, think that you need some kind of superpower to come up with great ideas?
I say anyone could do it. If I can do this, anyone can do it. And this sounds ridiculous. Here I am, bad talking some guys, but a different boyfriend had a patent. His name was Shaheen. And I thought to myself, if this guy could get a patent, a utility patent, I can do it too. Anyone can do this. If you have the determination and you really believe in yourself and the utility of your product, you need to go for it. But remember, there are going to be a million naysayers along the way. You just have to keep going and just ignore them. If you really think that you have something special, do it. And, you know, listen to some of the feedback, because I've listened to a lot of feedback from my customers and I've made corrections on my Click and Carry, but don't let them defeat you. Just keep believing in yourself and your product. Anyone can do it.
Yes, that is such, I mean, I feel like we should go out on that question, but we're not done yet. So, you know, I want to talk about product development, because that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with. If they have an idea for a unique product, it's like, oh my gosh, you know, if it's not just a simple differentiation, if it's something new and kind of never seen before, it seems very scary to kind of develop it. So can you talk a little bit about how you got started developing this product? You said, you know, when you started, it was just like the 2 pieces. So talk a little bit about like how the idea kind of came to you, and then like how you started prototyping, and, you know, how you got molds made. Like, how did you know how to do all these things, and what did you do during your product development process?
So a couple of different ways. The first is, like I said before, my friend Jennifer told me to shut up and stop talking about it and do something about it. And I did. And here's advice to all of your listeners. There's so many resources available to you out there. For example, I actually utilized a student who was studying product design for her master's at the Pasadena Design School. So I was able to hire her at an inexpensive rate versus in the real world, hiring a real product engineer. There is the Small Business Association. There is SCORE, which are CEOs who help other business owners with, they impart their knowledge to the new up and coming business owners. There's the PTRC, which is the Patent and Trademark Resource Center. Every single solitary state has one, and librarians at the Patent and Trademark Resource Center are taught to help people do a patent search, to write their patent, to figure out how to do their renderings, which are necessary in the patent process. So there are a ton of different ways you can get help from your community, even local colleges. I mean, there's so many students who are interested in helping entrepreneurs because they're going to get credit for their classes, plus they're going to learn something on your dime. So there are so many different amazing resources. And then for me, like I said, I worked with Audrey, so I paid her a certain amount and we worked on the 3D CAD renderings, and it took us 9 tries until we made it to the finish line. And it was important for me to have the physical 3D CAD printed model because I really needed to see it because I think in 3D, so I needed to visualize it. That was very helpful to me. But I knew that once I had the winner, the one that I knew was going to work, and believe it or not, the real win is that there's a male-female part in here that makes the click noise. That's what locks the click and carry into place. So that's the important piece. On the 9th one, that's when I said I need some sort of function like this. And that's when I knew it was time to go and get a mold made in China. I couldn't afford to make a mold in the United States at the time, and I still can't. I still work with a Chinese manufacturer.
How did you even know to go to China? Like, how did somebody tell you that? Like, how did you know to look for molds in China?
Yes, great question. So first, there's a book called Mom Inventor's Handbook by Tamara Monosoff, and it's basically how to get your product to market. And I used that as a guide initially, but as luck would have it, the guy across the hall from me, I live in a condo in Los Angeles, the guy across the hall worked for Ty, the Beanie Baby company. And he introduced me to his factory, and he's the one who introduced me and helped me to get it manufactured. So that was back in the early days of Zoom, and it's been an interesting adventure ever since.
And I know something that I struggled with when I got my molds made was that I didn't know the terminology. Yes, I was working with designers and I had all my 3D CAD and all those files and everything, but I didn't know what to look for as far as mistakes. And I also didn't know what needed to be communicated because this was my first product. I didn't know that the slope and the draft on the different parts needed to be a certain way. And I had no idea. So I got a lot of bad samples in the beginning, bad rough samples. And I think much of it was because I didn't know, and I didn't know how to communicate, and because there's a language barrier there. Did you have any of those problems?
I did. So my first factory, I had 2 factories now in China, and I'm currently with my second factory, and that was a referral through a friend, and I'll explain in a minute. But my first factory, they did an okay job. They were fine, but there was not consistency in the twist portion. So when I went on QVC, the only negative comments I would get is that it's too difficult to open. And that was because of the first mold. So when I was switching factories, what I did is I worked with 6 Chinese engineers at the new factory. And I also worked with a master tool maker here in the United States, because he may not have been a plastics infusion guy, but he's the one who actually built the molds in the United States. He was a master tool maker, and he was so helpful. He was just incredible at helping me to modify my my product. And I went from a 5.5 ounce product down to 3.5 ounces, which is a huge change as far as shipping. You wouldn't think a small modification like that would make such a difference, but it saves me a lot of money for shipping, number one. But number two, now I have consistency in the twist. So now even someone who has an arthritic hand can open the click and carry. So that's what I want to quickly go back to what we were saying about the naysayers. I listened to the bad feedback from my customers and I made a change. So you have to constantly do that with your invention over time as well.
Yeah, I agree. I had to do the same thing also because I learned hard lessons in shipping volume and I had to shrink it down. So never give up on that. So you mentioned that you got onto QVC when you first launched it. I guess, you know, my next question is what made you decide to try out for Shark Tank? But before we get to that, you decided to not license the product, but to bring it to market. And where did you start selling it? Like, let's talk about that before you started to try out for Shark Tank.
Sure. So I sold it locally. I would sell it in local gas stations and grocery stores. And we have something called the Pasadena flea market. 20,000 people go there one Sunday a month, and farmers markets. So I would do things like that and get feedback and to start to do my thing. And when I ultimately ended up leaving my job to do this full-time, now I've exited my job twice to do this full-time. I'm back to doing click and carry full-time, which is a big deal to me. But the first time when I quit, I did a trade show in Chicago called the Home and Houseware Show, and it was complete magic. I was in a small section called Inventor's Corner, and they had a mock Shark Tank with various vendors. And unbeknownst to me, I was discovered by QVC there. So what happened is that parlayed into a talk show. It was the Bethany Frankel show, and Bethany Frankel is the skinny girl margarita girl. And she brought me on her show. Her show was ending at the time, and she had a segment each week called Bethany in Your Business. And I agreed to go on. I was thrilled to go on because I think she's pretty great. I admire her and her skill, and I think she's a shark. She's just amazing. So I went on because I thought I was going to get some advice from her and maybe a small $5,000 or $10,000 stipend. And instead I was presented with a contract with QVC by David Venable and Lisa Robertson at the time. So it was a really big deal to me, and it really got me started. It really put me out there in the market.
So just to sum that up, you basically started knocking on doors in the beginning. You're like, I'm going to sell this to whoever's going to buy it. I'm going to, you know, just going out there to gas stations, say, hey, I got this product. Can you carry it in your station? This kind of thing. Selling it to everybody. And you did the Mark Cuban in the beginning. And then after that, which is like mad respect, anybody would have mad respect for that. And then you went to a trade show, which really you were shown off there in Inventor's Corner, and you were able to be recognized there. And that's what got you your break for QVC. Okay, then what made you decide? It seems like you're on a good path. What made you decide to try out for Shark Tank?
Oh boy. Well, that was my dream. I love that show. I think it's just a phenomenal show, and it's a great way to get PR, because I know that when people see click and carry, they realize, oh, I could use that. That's really going to help. But if they don't know about it, then no one's going to buy one. So that was just a great platform to really spread the word and to share my invention with the world. So that's why I really wanted to be on Shark Tank. Plus, I love the sharks. I think it's just a phenomenal show, and I always have, even from the beginning. I actually started applying in season 2, and I made it all the way to working with the producers, and at the 11th hour they decided not to take me, so I just continued to try again. So it turns out to this day I hold the record for the most attempts ever to get on the show, which was 7 or 8, and I finally made it on.
Love that. And you know, tell us about that Shark Tank experience, you know, where you tried out a bunch of times, you know, but what was it like to actually be there?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I don't know if I should be embarrassed or proud that it took me so many times to get on, but I wasn't going to give up because it's just an awesome show. But it was both the scariest and the most exciting day of my whole life. And I was so nervous, I actually physically ran out of saliva. I had to leave the stage at one point to grab a sip of water. But it was just amazing. All of the things that I studied, for the most part, it was in there, but I did forget a few things. For example, I messed up my pitch in the beginning. I was supposed to say, and juggle all that life has to throw your way. And the only thing that could come out of my mouth was, and juggle. And then I finally came to my senses. And while the unicyclist was juggling, I said, and juggle all that life has to come your way. But it was definitely delayed. And the bad news is the whole time I kept thinking, oh, you messed up. You messed this up. And so psychologically, that was damning in the beginning, but otherwise everything was pretty smooth. All the sharks talk over each other. So it was interesting trying to herd them and answer their questions without offending one or the other. But it was quite an experience. It was really exciting and fun and one of the best days of my whole life.
Yes, I can imagine. I'm pretty good at public speaking, but I can imagine I would be super nervous in that kind of situation. So something that I learned from you that really surprised me is that Shark Tank deals aren't immediate. So like you got a deal on the Shark Tank, but it doesn't happen right away. And so obviously you might not be able to talk about all of it on a podcast, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about how Shark Tank deals kind of work.
Okay, well, I definitely can't. I'll tell you what I can tell you. It's different with every company. Some deals go through immediately and some people wait, because what happens is, and this is very smart of the sharks to be concerned, sometimes people fill out their paperwork and they may not disclose that they had a partner before, or that maybe there was some infringement. So a lot of the sharks would be hesitant and the deal may not officially go through until all that is weeded out. So for example, if someone was interested in suing me, obviously I don't have a ton of money, but Mark Cuban does. So that would be where all of the hangers-on would come and try to infringe on that deal. So that's why some of the sharks are concerned with things like that. And that's about all I could say about it.
Yeah, no worries. So I think that just, it makes sense, obviously, but the way we see it in TV land, it's like, oh, they're walking off into the sunset and now they get the check the next day, no, it takes a little time. So
for due diligence too. I mean, because people could go up there on stage and say things that are not real. So the sharks have to do their due diligence and make sure that the entrepreneur is on the up and up, and both parties need to see if they can work together.
Yes, exactly. So what about the PR, right? So you get a lot of PR from Shark Tank, whether your deal goes through or not, you're still getting amazing PR. So how did that fare for you? Did you get a lot of sales as a result?
Yes. And I still continue to get sales because of the credibility of the show. It was such a blessing for me. And it's interesting. I was in season 12, episode 8. And if you'll notice, my episode was the only one that was shot pre-COVID. And that's because I actually shot the year earlier. And I was archived. I didn't make it to air my season. And luckily ABC bought my episode, and I was devastated that I didn't make it to air. I found out last February, but then I found out last May that I did make it to air. So it gave me an extra almost full year to prepare and to load up on inventory. So it was a blessing in disguise. And I aired on the perfect date. My 1 year anniversary is coming up. I aired on December 11th of 2020. So I can't even begin to tell you the amount of sales that I received. It was just crazy. The first 5 days, I basically doubled my entire sales for that whole year. No, I tripled it. It was just a phenomenal experience. And I continue to get some feedback from Shark Tank. For example, MSNBC ran with the fact that I auditioned 7 times. So I ended up getting a bunch of publicity for that. Or sometimes it'll get picked up in different periodicals, like Red Book magazine picked it up and Reader's Digest. And then I had a rerun. Unfortunately, it was the night of the Super Bowl, and I think everyone was passed out by the time my episode aired at 10 at night. But I'm secretly praying for another rerun on the normal Shark Tank, because they usually show some episodes from the season before. So cross your fingers for me, because every time it airs, I get a huge bump. And then sometimes people will pick it up, like affiliate marketers on Amazon or influencers. They'll talk about gadgets that they love. And I always notice a quick jump in my sales, and it's because of that. So it's amazing the power of influencers and affiliates these days.
Yeah. Excuse me. Absolutely. I don't think a lot of people realize that, but like when those episodes air, it's also like you have no idea, right? Because I've seen episodes before where my wife especially, she's one of those like as seen as on TV people that I have to like watch our debit card, because she'll go, buy like there'll be like a new thing showing up every day otherwise. But how do you gauge demands when the show airs? Did you just kind of take a guess? Do they kind of clue you in, like expect X, Y, or Z? Kind of how did that prep look?
Absolutely. In fact, they do give you some information. For example, I ended up seeing some of the numbers that the sharks that I made a deal with, that they their other businesses received in the past. And I was advised that I would probably need about 16,000 click and carries, but I knew in my gut that I would need more, and I did need more. I ended up selling, I want to say like 30,000 click and carries in the first 5 days. So it was one of those situations where they gave us a ballpark, but I just knew in my heart that because it's such an inexpensive item, I knew that I probably needed more. And the surprising thing is my average cart size was $33.46, which it's only a $12.99 product. So that tells me most people bought 3. So it was
Awesome.
pretty great.
Awesome. And that actually leads me to a question that I didn't even have written down. Do you have maybe products, and you probably are not going to share them, but do you have any products that are going to be like add-ons or upsells or things that you have in the works to be a complement to that product?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, because they're this close to being launched. First, and this is just a slight modification, but I made a special click and carry for breast cancer awareness, because I'm a 2-time breast cancer survivor. So a portion of the proceeds goes to the NBCC, which is the National Breast Cancer Coalition. I had cancer 9 years ago, and then unfortunately it reoccurred, and I just finished my radiation this August. So it's obviously a cause that is near and dear to my heart. So I've been thinking about introducing something like this for years, and the recent diagnosis made me move forward and order a whole bunch. So I'm going to be selling those. I just actually finished my listing, and I'm going to be sending in inventory. Plus, I'm going to be launching a new color. I'm launching red singles and red 2-packs. That's an interesting story. So remind me to tell you that, why I have red ones. But as far as the new inventions, I'll just give you a little preview. So basically, I have a new strapping system that aligns to the click and carry, where you will wear a crossbody, and imagine in your head it's attached to the equivalent of a blood pressure band. So you could actually wear your stand-up paddleboard, your surfboard, your ladder if you're in the construction industry. And then when your shoulder hurts, you just flop it around like a purse. So you can actually wear your heavy oblong objects, and it will work for skis. The reason I invented that is because Jennifer, the doctor I told you about before, when she brings her kids skiing, they always make her carry the skis and the poles. So she said, can you invent something for me so I can wear them? So that's what that will do. And then there's another version that makes it easy for small people like me to bring in a case of waters. You could use your hip as an anchor. So I use your body for physics to make it easier to carry things. So those are the two newest inventions coming, I'm hoping by early January.
Awesome. I love that. So another thing that I kind of thought of, congratulations on getting past the cancer that runs in on both sides of my family. So I've been through that. That's difficult. But I just got back from a real estate conference, and a lot of the people who are super successful there had some big trials and tribulations in their life, right? Whether it was, cancer or, living in their car. And you hear that story on Shark Tank a lot. What do you think? Do you think that, the people who are going through these hard times realize that, life is fleeting and you really just need to go and get it? Or kind of, what do you think is the overlying kind of theme, or how do you think people who have these hardships are able to turn that around and make them into something positive?
I think you hit it on the head. Life is fleeting, and that's what you realize. And that's when I quit my job the first time around. I remember the last time I found out I had cancer. I was in surgery in February, then a second surgery in March. And at the time I was working for Medtronic, I used to sell a device called a deep brain stimulator, which is a pacemaker for the brain for Parkinson's patients, essential tremor patients, and dystonia patients. It was an amazing job. I loved it. It really helped people, but it wasn't my passion. My passion is my product. So after the surgeries, I decided I'm going to leave at the end of the year. So I saved up all my money. And I left in December of that year, and I was able to do Click and Carry full time for the next 2 years until money was an issue and I had to go back to work.
Awesome. Yeah. Like I said, some of the biggest successes that I've seen are people who, are really kind of tackle these hard challenges in life and turn them around. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
To pivot to something not as serious, but what our audience is tuned into is Amazon. And I'd love to know kind of how you heard about Amazon. Was it kind of part of your plan early on? Was it something that, after being on Shark Tank and maybe listing your product on Amazon, being like, holy smokes, like I can really grow my brand, my channel if I expand to Amazon? And what was that journey like?
Well, that's an interesting question because I didn't really know about Amazon before Shark Tank. I had just joined maybe about a year earlier, and it's because I received advice, and now looking back, it's bad advice from a friend. And he told me, don't go on Amazon, your product is going to get ripped off. And I was really worried about that. And I still continue to worry about that. But the good news is I have 2 utility patents, and now because of the Shark Tank, people know that I am the inventor and the name, and I actually spoke for the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So I feel like a little bit of extra protection, hopefully. But I wish I knew about Amazon earlier, because I think I could have made a killing years earlier with Amazon. I really do. So what happened is I entered a contest. One of my friends from Medtronic told me about the 5-minute pitch, which was this really cool contest that was done by let's see, so it was Scott Volker, it was Steve Chu, it was Mike Jackness, and it was Greg Mercer. They had this fun contest and I ended up winning, and they're all amazing e-commerce superstars, as you know. So they're the ones who told me that, hey, listen, you could really make this something. And I told them, no, retail's my channel. Like my goal was to be in 6,000 retail stores. And they agree that that's a good outlet too, but it turns out that Amazon is a very viable channel for me. And I love Amazon. I'm expanding to the UK now.
Awesome. That's kind of ties directly into my next question is what are your goals for 2022? Kind of what's your vision? What are some of your priorities? If you were to take it 80-20, what are your kind of your 20% of, things that you really want to hit hard in the next year?
So what I would want to hit hard in the next year is getting into retail, getting into those 6,000 doors. That still is one of my goals, because now I have my foot in the door at Amazon, but I really want to get into retail. So right now I'm currently onboarding for Lowe's.com. I received my vendor number on Monday, and I'm going to be in Meijer stores, which is a Michigan-based store. I'm going to start in 111 stores in the next couple of weeks. And there's some other people like buybybaby.com. This was supposed to be for CVS. They ordered 12,000 click and carries, and at the 11th hour, they decided to go with the beauty products. So hopefully next year I will get into CVS, and that's why I have the red CVS colored click and carries. And a Kroger.com. So I hope to get in Kroger stores. I would just need them. Walmart, Target, obviously. So that's my goal. Like I said, I'm expanding to the UK, and if that is a success, then we're gonna add Italy, Spain, Germany, and France. And then go from there. There's a service called rangeme.com where people who are selling into retail can go and go attend virtual trade shows or meet with buyers. So it's been a godsend for me.
Awesome. So on that note, once again, not a question I had pre-written down, but it really made me kind of think about, as somebody who's never probably faced growth like this of your own business, what systems, what processes, what people, kind of what are you putting in place? What kind of people are you bringing on to your business in order to hit some of those goals?
So I'm actually in the process of most likely relocating. I'm on the East Coast right now with family. And I'm thinking about renting out my place in Los Angeles and moving back here because it's a lot less expensive here. So I can put all that money into my business and not have to stress about paying a huge mortgage. I could cover all those costs and have some freedom. I actually received a container and I was going to put it into my sister's basement. My sister has an empty basement and she said I could use her basement for free. But what I didn't know is that you can't ship a container to a residential neighborhood. So I actually put a shout out to Facebook and I said, does anyone have a landing dock and forklift that I could rent for the next couple of days? And I ended up getting 9 responses. And one of the responses was a childhood friend. Our moms are best friends and they have room in their warehouse. So I'm making them my new 3PL. It's been amazing. I just received my container about 2 weeks ago. I'm getting stuff moved from my 3PL in Chicago to Pennsylvania. It's coming tomorrow. And we just ended up getting up and running on ShipStation for Kroger.com, Amazon for my website. And then now we're going to add Lowe's and Bye Bye Baby and Meyer. So it's been
Love
exciting.
it. Yeah, I love to hear those journeys, trial by fire, right? Nothing like, never being being in the business and then having to learn all that stuff. So I love that. If you could talk to yourself a couple of years ago when this idea was first coming about, what would the 3 things, the 3 tips that you would clue yourself in on that would really help that journey?
Oh my gosh. The first would be go on Amazon. I missed the boat. I mean, holy cow. That's when people made all the money. That's when the people like Stephen Chow and Greg Mercer started. I wish I was smart enough to pick up on that trend. Those guys are awesome, by the way. They're just my idols. Yeah, Steve Chu, he's pretty cool. So I would tell myself to get on Amazon as soon as humanly possible. What else would I do? I never took any money. I think I would probably take some funding because I think it could have made the process a lot easier on myself. And what else? I utilized some pretty amazing people and I met some amazing mentors along the way. For example, at the SBA, I met this professor of entrepreneurial studies at USC, Albert Napoli, and he's one of my best friends to this day, and he taught me so much. Rick Tell, I can't even begin to tell you how many people helped me and moved me forward in my business. Tyson Jacobson, I would just say continue networking and continue moving the business forward.
Yeah, I think that's one of the, like I always tell people, I'm an introvert. I hate going to conferences. It's just not my jam, but I will show up once in a while. And the best part about it is the people that you meet. I always joke that I never go into the conference, right? I've been doing this for too long. Majority of this stuff that's being taught is probably stuff I already know, but it's the conversations off in the little corner there with the few couches and the little coffee table, where you're meeting with all the people who've been really deep in the e-commerce world for a lot of years. And that's where you get the real value. So I think that's invaluable in terms of the networking. I couldn't agree more there. Another thing you mentioned, which I would love to touch on too, is, taking funds. People are so afraid of giving up part of their business or shaving some off or having to pay loans back, things like that. But I always tell people, it's like, oh, do you want 100% of $1 million or 50% of $100 million, right? I mean, if you really look at it in terms of taking money and then putting it to work, like my wife and I are really big into real estate these days. She's a real estate agent and really a go-getter. And so, we've leveraged ourselves and we just bought our was it our 4th or our 5th property? So, we're really scaling that. So but it's risky, it's super risky, but you have to realize that, like, especially, go back and listen to Rich Dad Poor Dad. You want to use those funds to leverage and grow. And so I think that was a great point. I think that's awesome advice. All right. So we come to the other part that Amy and I really love is we're, constant learners. Um, I've read too many business books. So I'm trying to scale back, even though one of my coaches just gave me a couple other great suggestions that I really want to check out. But what gives you motivation in terms of books, podcasts, personal development, anything that you can share in terms of, maybe a person or a podcast or a book that's really helped you level up?
Gosh, that's a really tough question to just pick one. So I'm going to throw you a curveball and tell you that on Mondays, I meet with a group. It's called Shark Tank Pals. And there's a private group of people who have been on Shark Tank. And some of the companies are multi-million-dollar companies. Some of the companies are smaller companies like mine. And we meet in this mastermind weekly. And we also have our own Facebook page. So people will throw up questions. They'll say, hey, listen, so-and-so contacted me. What do you think? Or what do you think of this new app? Has anyone used it? And everyone is so willing to help each other. And it's all a big brainstorming session. And then we had our first meeting in person. I wasn't there. I Zoomed in because I had just finished radiation, but they just had it in Atlanta. And there were 12 different companies, and these people were so bright and brilliant. I learned so much at that conference. They sat me on a chair and I was there virtually, but that's how I learned. So I would say to your audience, get into masterminds, get into groups with peers, and always get into groups with peers who are doing better than you, because you'll be amazed at what you can learn from other people and how willing people are to share. Because I know I'm always willing to help, because so many people have helped me along the way, and I feel that it's necessary to give back. So that would be the curveball that I would throw you.
I love it. No, that's great. That is great advice. And even if it's just people that you meet in a Facebook group, and say, hey, let's jump on once a week on Zoom. It doesn't have to be a paid one. It doesn't have to be super, structured or whatever. The other thing is to go on Facebook and look for people in your own town, right? Nothing like getting together weekly and maybe even, a lot of people are always afraid to like share things, right? Because they think it's like, oh, this is my secret little trick or whatever. Maybe even come up with some kind of pledge where, if you want to be a part of the group, that you promise to not share it with anybody else, if that's a worry or something like that. Just make sure that those people are trustworthy, and that, that you guys keep it tight, and make sure that you're helping each other and not just getting in there and like stealing tricks and not contributing. So I absolutely love that. All right, Kimberly, how can people get a hold of you? How can they find out about your products? Let people know how they can learn more about you.
Sure. So let's see. So on LinkedIn, I'm under Kimberly Meckwood, and it's Kimberly and then Meckwood. I'm Click and Carry with an ampersand on Facebook, and Kimberly Meckwood. I have two. Instagram, I'm at Click and Carry with an A&D. My website is clickandcarry.com. And shoot me a message on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I'm always available to offer advice. Ask Amy. She and I have chatted a couple of times, and she's so smart and gave me such great advice. But I'm happy to share that information with anyone else. So please contact me. I'm happy to help if I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for all of you who are listening, if you haven't done so yet, please rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We really appreciate it, guys. We're doing super well in the seller poll. So if you're watching live right now, go to sellerpoll.com. Please vote for the podcast. Amy and I have been up to this for quite a few years now, and we love that we've continuously improved. And it's mostly because we have awesome guests like Kimberly. So Kimberly, thanks so much for being on. And guys, if you want to join us live, remember you can do it every time, Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific time, sellerroundtable.com/live. In a minute here, we're going to stop going live. We're going to stop recording, and people are going to be able to talk and interact with Kimberly without anybody else knowing. So she might give up some secret sauce that you might not catch if you're watching on one of the platforms, or later on in the podcast. So join us live. We'd love to have you, and we'll see you next time on the Seller Roundtable. Thank you, guys.
Bye.